How do you tell somebody that you know nothing about the diet of Paleolithic people without telling them that you know nothing about the diet of Paleolithic people? Just call those people a vegan. That's right. One author is claiming that a certain tribe of Northwest African humans from around 13,000 BCE were vegans. Then this author does nothing to prove it or even remotely support that claim. Sounds more to me like a clickbait article, but it's still worth a discussion. After all, if we don't talk about it, people could be walking around and not talking about ideas and suppositions without ever questioning them. And that is not good for anyone. So this story is from joe.co.uk by Ryan Price on January 11th, 2025. Guys, in reading this article, I found a great deal of misrepresentation here. Maybe a lack of understanding, maybe somebody just making wild claims just to get people to click on the article. I don't know, but this doesn't strike me as anywhere near true. There are so many reasons for it. But I just want to say that you cannot take this small group of people in one corner of the world and then just characterize all prehistoric humans as being that way. And so that's my initial thought on that.
I agree.
I'm going to move to you first. Let me get your initial thoughts on what this article was talking about.
I'm with you. Like, I thought this article was a great example of poor reporting. The wording of the title was extremely misleading. The title was Scientists Find That Cavemen Ate a Mostly Vegan Diet in Groundbreaking New Study. First of all, we need to define some terms, okay? Caveman is like a layman's term that refers to any prehistoric human, not in any specific human species or any specific time period, right? Like when you read this article further, you realize that he's talking about Paleolithic humans in a very particular North African area. Then there's the term vegan, which we know is a word that, elicits a lot of contention, or I guess you could say strong emotions for meat eaters. So we have to make sure that we differentiate a plant-based diet from a vegan diet. A vegan diet does not include any type of animal products in any capacity and not just food, right? It focuses on animal welfare. Then a plant-based diet doesn't include meat, dairy, or eggs, but it can include other type of animal products. They can use the bones, they can use the skin of an animal, they can use their teeth, whatever they want. And it's often, like in modern times, a plant-based diet is focused on improving individual health rather than animal welfare. So I don't really think that Paleolithic people were worried about animal welfare. So you can't really call them vegan.
Yeah. So on that note, I want to flip to Jonathan. What does this article give you any newfound understanding of the way prehistoric or Paleolithic people lived, ate? What did this author accomplish?
I think that if I remember correctly, I did look up the paper and read into it a little bit. I didn't have time to finish it, so I won't go into anything that was in there because I don't feel competent to do so. However, I do know a little bit about biology. My second degree was almost finished in biology, but it would be more accurate to say they had less meat than the more northern Paleolithic people and the Western hunter-gatherers. They still ate meat, but meat was a significantly less important part of their diet. They're not vegan at all. And he actually, I don't think, was saying that. However, the use of caveman is just a clickbait item. So that they were Paleolithic humans. They weren't cavemen. A lot of them didn't live in caves. They had villages. Get over it.
Yeah.
Interesting that they also had evidence that they cultivated grains. How did they determine that? One way was dental cavities. Dental cavities that were caused in a population by consumption of starchy plants. Starch is broken down into sugar in the mouth by amylase, which is an enzyme found in saliva. So if you eat starch without chewing it, you don't get as much calories out of it. Don't try that. But if you do want to figure it out, just take a cracker and chew it until it gets sweet. You'll notice it.
Yeah.
But the cavities in your teeth, and there was a lot of them in this population, and they hadn't been found in more northerly populations. So therefore, the cavities are probably due to eating a lot of starchy plants and that creating free-floating sugar in your mouth, which then inspires bacteria and causes cavities. So that's one thing that I learned from this particular thing. But the paper was just all over the place as far as factually. So
right. And so
I think the study was more thorough than the actual article. I also went and looked at the actual study, and it was focused on North Africa and Morocco. And the researchers said that, as Jonathan mentioned, they used all kinds of tests on the teeth and decay and all of this in order to be able to tell what kind of diet they had. But also pointed out that this is just for that area. You can't say from this study that all humans on that time period ate a mostly vegan diet or whatever that means that the article was trying to say. That they're going to continue to examine different sites because they want to determine if other late Stone Age civilizations ate a similar diet. This is because our previous assumption was that Paleolithic humans ate mostly meat. That's why they call it the paleo diet, that focuses, mostly on either like meat, healthy fat, nuts, seeds, and all of these kind of whole foods.
Well, I want to stop there. I want to stop there and just insert this before we move on, because I think it's important to talk about the location and to talk about what was going on at that time period. So, number one, and I think most importantly, this author, I think, fails to show that not all cave people or Paleolithic people around 13,000 BCE, or really at any time period, were all monolithic. We're all the same, right? Cave people, Paleolithic people, were opportunists, and they ate what their environment gave them. They ate plants and legumes if that's what was abundantly available. They ate fish if that was what was abundantly available. And if it was easier to hunt and take down small game or big game, that was the thing that they centered their diet on. And it depended where you lived and what your capability was going to be based on the geography. Now, another thing that we have to remember is that 13,000 years BCE, I think I said years ago. That's not correct. That would be about 15,000 years ago. But 13,000 years BCE, the northern Morocco was not the Sahara of today. It was very lush. It was filled with streams and rivers, and there was probably a lot of fish. So the thing that the author said, he said, well, when people picture caveman, they picture them taking down a big prey and roasting it over a fire. Well, that's not necessarily true. I picture cavemen in some areas fishing a lot, right? Or finding meat, finding food in other areas that are unlike people that are separated from them. So all that to say, yes, I think it's very important to identify this was a small patch of northern Africa, 13,000 years BCE, and probably had nothing to do with the Mesopotamian cultures of 13,000 BCE or that of Northern Europe, like you guys pointed out.
Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt, right. Where they could
rely many thousands of years later. So, it's like,
those are great points, because people were also moving around a lot at those times. The civilizations weren't settled until about, I think it will be like maybe 5,000 years later or so, when the agricultural revolution started. They started settling more, and they were able to domesticate animals and, using their milk and using like all of their more animal products. So at the time that these Paleolithic humans lived, it was, as you say, very, very opportunistic. They just ate whatever they could cultivate, whether they were in a specific spot for like, a season, and then they moved somewhere else. Whatever there was a bigger amount of whatever they were going to start eating. It was just like as they went, they ate.
Yeah. An explanation there was an explanation of how they figured out that they were partially growing cereal foods was in a procedures of the National Academy of Sciences, USA, issue 111, pages 954 to 959. And one of the things it says was the presence of early evidence linking this is about the cavities, high prevalence of caries to reliance on highly cariogenic wild plant foods and Pleistocene hunter-gatherers from North Africa. This evidence predates other high caries populations and the first signs of food production by several thousand years. We infer that increased reliance on wild plants rich in fermentable carbohydrates caused an early shift towards a disease-associated oral microbiota. Which they're saying is that these people, by how much damage there was to their teeth, they actually probably were doing horticulture, not agriculture.
Yeah.
But, if they found fertile ground, they had seeds, they plant them. Yep. And then when they came back, they would use them. So there was a lot more of an abundance there. And as Jimmy pointed out, 13,000 BCE was a very wet part. It was, just as the ice age ice was starting to recede, and the Sahara, where the desert is, was really kind of a savanna, and in places kind of jungly. So a lot of water and rivers and that going through there. It doesn't look like it now, but you know what I mean.
So I thought I highlighted that part too. So quoting the author, the most remarkable aspect of this study is the revelation that this population developed ways to cultivate plant growth and harvest crops thousands of years before the agricultural revolution took place. I don't want to, that's remarkable. I don't want to give this group too much credit though, because I think what studies have shown and what I think, some sources that I've come across just over my years in general is that, while they were not building civilizations and they were more nomadic, it doesn't mean that they were leaving for good. I mean, they would roam the same areas. They would have areas they would return to, right? So they may have been nomadic, but they still had different hunting grounds, different feeding grounds, different places that they would go to find the things that they needed. And probably one of the things they figured out was, remember when we ate all of those fruit and we left all the seeds or we left all that stuff there? Weird, that fruit just grew here. And so they probably, before they turned it into a civilization, turned it into harvesting, turned it into horticulture, but we're still very much on the move. And so it probably took a little while, probably took a population boom for people to start settling because, there's only so far you can go until you run into other tribes that, you run into issues. It's like, well, let's just settle here and keep doing this thing that we're doing. And so that kind of fed into that development, at least from what I've seen. I'm no expert, and I never want to give the impression that I am one.
Me either.
I really enjoyed this.
This is 1,000 years after, after this was Göbekli Tepe and those Anatolian settlements. So, you can see where this is kind of going. The people up there were building not cities, but large settlements. But the people in North Africa were still being hunter-gatherers.
I do want to come back to that. I want to come back to Göbekli Tepe because that is a really good point to take me to where I want to bring this kind of development of civilization. But AJ, you picked out this article. You thought the vegan topic would be great for this conversation because I am the resident vegan, at least for tonight. So I've been doing a vegan diet for 4 months. I'm not really a vegan though. I mean, think about it. So I'm a vegan, but I have children that are meat eaters, that have leather shoes. So I am feeding the machine that creates that abuses animals, if you will. I'm not a real vegan. And even if these people had a mostly vegan diet, we could never consider them vegan, could we? And so AJ, I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And that's why even when I've eaten whole foods, plant-based, I always continue to call myself plant-based because I don't think that I could meet the vegan requirements to qualify, I guess. So I mostly do it for my health. And then when I came into the atheist community, I kind of started to also think about the animal welfare aspect. I remember I had a call with you and Objectively Dan and Forrest on the ACA channel, the atheist experience. One thing that I was kind of always thinking about was on that call, and it kind of relates to this because it speaks to human evolution, is that a lot of people think that humans have evolved to adapt to eating meat and that we get, such a big significant benefit from it. But there are so many other factors that have helped increase our, body size or strength. We have more processed foods. We have better healthcare. We have food access in general has increased, right? We have more fitness options to work on. We can work hard and become stronger. We have medications that affect our body composition, among other things. So we know that humans truly have only been eating meat for about 2 million years. And modern humans have only been around for less than 500,000 years. And as we just said, domestication of animals started 10,000 years ago. The Industrial Revolution was 200 years ago. There is just not enough time for the true definition of evolution to have changed our bodies to have become accustomed to eating meat.
That's right.
We don't require meat.
And you know what? So I want to jump in here because I have said before, like talking to Dan, Objectively Dan, that is the ACA's own Objectively Dan from Truth Wanted and Talk Heathen. I said something like, well, the human body is not designed to eat the kind of meat that we eat today. And he's like, well, what does that even mean? And I don't think I really explained it well, but, most scholars on this subject will say that, and like we talked about earlier, depending on the environment would depend on the access to meat and how much you ate it. Some people even say that, in some societies, they had meat, but they strictly kept it for special occasions, religious, in the early days of religion developing, maybe religious ceremonies or some kind of worship, it wasn't a hallmark of their diet. Now, people might eat a bacon cheeseburger every single day. That is not what we are designed to do. And that's what I mean by that. Meat is fine if you want to talk about the way that humans have evolved, but we have pushed past what we are designed to do in so many ways, which is why we have so much chronic back pain and chronic other kind of pains and illnesses, because we're not these sedentary people that we've turned into, but we've created this life for ourselves. So on that note, that came from some of these settlements we developed. And Jonathan, you started talking about Göbekli Tepe, it's a tongue twister, in Anatolia and in Eastern Europe, and the other places like it. And I just want to give you a chance.
12,000 BCE.
Yeah, I want to give you a chance to expand on that a little bit. What is the significance of that between the connections that we're making about how Paleolithic people lived, and maybe their relationship to animal meat, nature, etc.? I mean, what's the significance there?
Well, I think the significance is, first thing we have to remember is that these are modern humans.
Yeah,
they had slightly larger brains than we do, but they had a lot more sensory processing necessary in their lives. So that's the thing. They're modern humans. They are every bit as intelligent as we are. Yeah.
Well, okay. It depends on what you're referring to. Maybe might be appropriate. Yeah.
But so Göbekli Tepe and the other tepes around it that show fairly large settlements of a couple thousand people. The significance of that is that this is the same area that agriculture started, the Anatolian area. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine that we're just pushing the date back to where they may not have been permanent settlements, and they don't think they were at this point, but you're starting to see the seeds of permanent settlements, cities, large cities like these were. What they're finding now, we wouldn't consider them large. We would consider them a hamlet. But for that time, having that many people feeding off the same few square miles is a big accomplishment. So, this is pretty interesting in a lot of ways. I'm looking forward to when the rest of the anthropology and that comes out on it and how much they find out about this, because it's going to say a lot about what our ancestors and civilization itself became and started from.
So Göbekli Tepe, from what I understand, only about 5% of it has been excavated. And what people think is that while it may not have been a permanent settlement in the way that we think about it, they actually do think that multiple tribes, multiple societies in that area used that site, worked together on that site to build some kind of ritual area or trading post. And it might not have belonged to only one person, but these early societies or these early settlements can represent maybe the first kind of international relations, if you will, the first kind of
getting together.
Interconnected society. And that is where I wanted to tie it to, because this is the atheist community of Austin. We like to talk about religious issues. And therefore, when we go back through this whole conversation that we've just had, and we look at early humans figuring out that they can cultivate crops, and then later saying, well, why don't we just stay here? And then we start to see settlements develop. That is where religion actually starts to really take form. Not to say that the foraging societies didn't have their own religions, but in the development of these societies, these settlements that relied on rainwater, you might see them adhering to worship of a storm god, like, I don't know, Yahweh, like El, like so many other storm gods that were over these societies that needed these storms in order to grow their crops and feed their animals. And unlike the societies at the longitudinal lines or in the beneficial areas, if you will, where rivers overflooded, well, they had a steady supply of water, right? So they didn't worship a storm god. They might have worshiped the god of the sky or the god of the moon or something different. And anyway, the way that we settled and the way that we built our settlements, the way that we kind of determined what we needed, created the gods, right? And I think that is such a fascinating story. And I don't want to take up the space for the end of this segment by just kind of blabbering on about my fascination with this time period. So I'll give you guys a minute each to close out, and then we can call it good for this week. Jonathan, I'll start with you.
I think that as we find the initial points where different clans got together and different organizations got together to start creating society and start religious activities, I find it fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to all the research that comes out of it when they start excavating the rest of these sites, and including the ones in North Africa, to show how we evolved into what our societies evolved into what they are now.
Yeah. I'm proud to be human. I get so that far. You know what? I get so sucked into, I know. I'm sometimes really disappointed to be human, to be honest with you. But I really envy the people that came before us. They had it tough. And they managed to survive. Anyway, AJ, please close us out.
I don't have anything deep like you guys to say, but I'm going to say that if there's anything that this article should have taught us, is rather than that they were vegan or whatever they said, is that this threw off the whole paleo diet, because the main aspect of the paleo diet is not to eat grains. And we just found out that they ate grains. So
yeah, good point. I mean, our new understanding of the paleo diet, right? And again,
Paleo 2.0.
Even if they ate largely plant-based, they couldn't have been vegan. They were making clothes out of hides and weapons out of bones. And so, catchy article title. Nice try. But you haven't sold us. Anyway, the reason I love being a host at the ACA is the wide array of things that we can cover. And getting into early human history is something that I'm passionate about, and I can tell that you guys are as well. And I really thank you for joining. I really appreciate this conversation tonight. And that's going to do it for this week. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. And for more Nonprofits content, click the link below.